Hey, welcome to the garden here on this actually fairly chilly fall day. We actually had our first night, got down about 41 last night, so definitely a chill in the air. But as you can tell, the sun is out and shining and doing great. So, what I'd like to talk to you about today are pumpkins. So, as you can kind of tell, these vines are just kind of running around here. And now this is a spot that the grass did not grow, so this is where I pretty much pile up my compost. You can kind of see some of the unfinished compost still right here with some sticks that were trimmed off of bushes, and there's some shavings from cleaning out the rabbit cages. But over here, you really can't tell, but this was a giant compost pile at the beginning of the season. Okay, so pumpkins are actually very heavy feeders. And what I thought I'd do is I took this partially decomposed compost pile, which is right here in the corner between the pallet garden and the neighbor's fence there. And this is just piled high with organic matter and things like that. And I figured I'd just do an experiment and try to grow my pumpkins in unfinished compost. And I got to tell you, they're doing quite well. Now on this side of the fence, not so much, not very impressive. Okay, I think on this side of the fence there's one Seminole pumpkin right here. You can always tell Seminole by that shape, and also the leaves, kind of the mottled look, are very traditionally associated with the Seminole pumpkin. Now, I'm gonna show you what these guys will do. So if you are not in good terms with your neighbor, you may want to consider planting your pumpkins elsewhere, because this is my neighbor's yard. Now check this out. I don't know why the pumpkins decided to run this way instead of towards my yard, but I've done this before, and he actually enjoys it. He doesn't mind at all. He waters them, he cuts around them, he lets them grow, and there are some massive pumpkins. Checking this one out here. This is actually I'm not sure if you can see, just appreciate how big this pumpkin is right there. That's actually more of a winter squash, but I'm calling everything pumpkin, not just your typical, orange Halloween pumpkin. What I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, these guys took over his entire backyard. If you kind of pan this way, you can kind of see some of it still growing on the fence there, and his little garden box back there. And he had these vines were growing almost up to the neighbor's fence back there. So it just took over this entire area. So I think all the extra nutritional boost from the growing in the compost really is what triggered this pumpkins just to explode. And speaking just in general terms, I mean, pumpkins will spread out. So if you don't have a lot of room, pumpkins are not what you're going to want to do. Trying to grow them up a trellis, I mean, it's been done. People do that with the I guess the cattle panels. It looks like an archway, and the pumpkins might hang down or something, which is a lot of work. If you really want to put that much time into it to get the pumpkins, I mean, by all means, go for it. But there you go. That's a little update on just some of the pumpkins that are growing. Now let me take you inside the pallet garden and kind of show you what the next topic I want to talk to you about, that you can also look forward to in your fall garden. All right, sorry. So before I move on to talking about the next topic, you can kind of see outside of the pallet fence here, the pumpkin grew around, it grew up, grew through the pallets and onto the ground, and then along the ground over here. So I finally cut the tip off of it, so stop running. But there's a pumpkin growing right there. Okay, so what's unique about this pumpkin? I didn't plant this one. Okay, I very carefully planted Seminole pumpkins and the long, I forget what it's called, but it's an heirloom type, that the big long winter squash right there. I did not plant this. So this grew out of my compost pile and then just produced a pumpkin with a ton of vegetation. So that's something to be worried about too when you compost your pumpkins. If you don't want to have pumpkins growing, maybe you want to compost them elsewhere where they may not re-sprout. Because if you're growing a pumpkin patch and you deliberately plant pumpkins into your compost, if something grows that is a pumpkin and you don't notice it, that you didn't plant that one, you may be disappointed and or surprised. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with this pumpkin, but like I said, it is getting towards fall, so there may not be enough time for this pumpkin to actually ripen, because it probably sprouted midsummer, as opposed to planting it early spring like I did the other ones. That'll be pretty much ripe here very soon. All right, so shifting gears a little bit here, guys. You notice what this plant is right here, this big mass of leaves and fern looking stuff. This is, yes, asparagus. So if you don't know that there are male and female asparagus plants, typically you're going to get males sold from your big box stores or the root stocks that you buy in the store, because they typically will produce more spears, I guess, up to 30% more. But if you're just a small home gardener, I grew both these plants from seed, so you don't know what you're going to get. And obviously, this plant here is a female. How can I tell? Well, check this out right there. See that little guy? Yes, that is an asparagus seed pod, or asparagus berry, I guess you want to call it. They are very poisonous, so do not eat those. Okay, they're not going to something you ever want to try eating. But this plant is just kind of covered in these little guys here. So I think this is the Mary Washington variety. Not that it really makes a difference, but I mean, all asparagus are gonna have the same similar type seeds. Check it out, this little cluster right there is pretty neat. How they form this little balls like that right on the stem. As I'm trying to find it again. There it is right there. But they kind of blend in with the foliage. So the males make little indiscreet little flowers, nothing to even look at. So hopefully these will be fertilized. Hopefully the pollen was released at the right time. These plants were able to fertilize, and hopefully these seeds are viable. And I'll definitely do a video on starting asparagus from seed. These seeds right here, exactly, next spring when the time comes around. So let me go show you some other stuff growing on over here in the pallet garden. All right, so this is another asparagus I grew from seed this spring, and this is in a much shadier location than the other ones, so it's not doing quite as well, as asparagus does want as much sun as you can possibly give it, unless maybe you live in a desert climate or a very, very hot climate that will benefit from some shade. But here it is, mid-October, well, about middle October, and this thing is still putting on some new shoots, which is pretty neat. But if you can kind of tell that down here at the bottom, now these I thought were supposed to be the purple asparagus. It doesn't appear that they're going to be very purple. Maybe as they get older, they'll maybe in the spring, maybe they'll come out all purple, but who knows. But anyways, good asparagus, growing it from seed. You can definitely multiply like tons. You saw how many seeds were on that one plant, and I think each seed pod has 2 seeds, if I'm not mistaken. So double basically how many pods you'll get with seeds, and there you go. And you can exponentially increase your asparagus. So growing it from seed may take longer, as you need to wait the 2 to 3 years before you can actually harvest, which is fine. But see how this plant's just kind of flopping over? I think that's because in part that it's just kind of shaded out and very, very top heavy, quite honestly. There's a lot of growth on these little tiny spears. I mean, these little stalks here are just microscopically thin, but because there's so much compost and so much good nutrition, the tops of these plants are just absolutely just top heavy, and this plant can barely keep itself up. So I've been trying to keep it staked up against the tomato cage right there. And speaking of tomatoes, here's a late season, one of my favorite tomatoes, the orange peach, which is fantastic. And even this late into to the fall, it kind of pretty much stopped producing altogether, and I almost pulled it out, but I'm glad I did not, because right here, putting on some more fruit. So don't give up the hope. All right, so right now, October 18th, typically our last frost date should be about the 20th, about the 23rd, but I looked in the forecast, in the next 10 days, there is nothing close to frost. So we have one day of like 44. So while it's cool, your plants will do just fine. So if you're in a hurry to pull your tomatoes and your peppers out, I promise you, give them a little bit more time and they will continue producing way up into the frost. And even after the slightest little frost, I mean, you get like a 32-degree morning, you might damage some of the leaves, but the plants will recover if you get a little warming trend. So, don't give up hope just yet, because the growing season is as long as you want it to be. You can always try to cover these things up, like some hoops around it, make like a low tunnel. If you really need to extend the season to ripen some fruit, like these peppers right here. Let me show you this right here. You can kind of tell right there, but let me go closer and show you what the peppers look like over here. All right, now doesn't that look pretty? These are ghost peppers, boot jolokias. Just look at this plant. It is absolutely loaded. They got a late start this year, so these are not all going to ripen. Unlike tomatoes, they're not going to just sit on this countertop and just fully mature like they would, just because they're nightshades. That's not what I found in my experience, at least with these ghost peppers that I grow. for powders and sauces and things like that. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with making some green ghost pepper powder. It's just as good. It's just maybe not quite as hot, and maybe the flavor might be a little bit different. But I mean, just look at this. So this plant is absolutely just falling over. It just falls over. It is so heavy with pods on it. And this right here kind of has a little bit more support with this trellis, but it's in just the same shape. I need to get here and pick as many of these as I can, get them in the dehydrator today, hopefully. But there you go. So there's a little late fall pumpkins, asparagus, and peppers. Hopefully you enjoyed it, this little tour. Let me know what you're growing in your fall garden. And if you have any tricks or tips you guys have used to extend your harvest into the fall, I'd love to hear them about them in the comments down below. As always, thank you for watching from up here on the hillside. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.